The information contained in this podcast is an expression of opinion and does not constitute investment advice. This is the Gold Money Podcast with Alistair MacLeod, keeping you up to date with expert opinion on precious metals and the markets.
Hello, this is Alistair MacLeod, and I'm delighted to have a returning guest, Gerald Celente, who's the publisher of Trends Journal, which can be found on trendsjournal.com. Gerald will be familiar to our listeners, not least because he has a way with inventing portmanteau words like sheeple and prostitutes, which hardly need explaining. Welcome, Gerald.
Oh, great being back, Alistair.
As the title of the Trend Journal suggests, you specialise in tracking and analysing social and political trends. I think that's a fair description, isn't it?
It is.
Well, can we start then with the United States? Because I see unemployment as a real problem. I don't believe the government statistics. I believe John Williams of Shadow Stats when it comes to inflation, and it looks to me like there is very little hope, almost no hope, of economic recovery, getting the government out of its deficit. This must be coming at quite a social and political cost. How do you see the situation in the States, Gerald?
Most of the people are dead to what's happening and believe what they're being told. So, for example, the only reason there's any recovery at all, as we all know, it's an interest rate recovery, period, paragraph. You could borrow money at almost nothing. And if you're one of the too big to fail banks, you actually get it for nothing. As a matter of fact, the U.S. taxpayers subsidize the 7 largest banks who made $83 billion in profit to just about the tune of $85 billion last year by all the cheap money that they're giving to by the Fed. And it's the same thing virtually in all of the so-called industrialized nations. You have over there in Europe, you have with the ECB with Mario Draghi, the former head of the Goldman Sachs Gang's European division, vice chairman, now head of the European Central Bank, with his ongoing monetary transactions. Here we have QEs, quantitative easing. And as you well know, that over in Japan now with the new Prime Minister Abe, the Bank of Japan is also in the same game. So when you look at what happens back here in the States, it's a very, very, very simple story. The Federal Reserve has added more than $2 trillion to its balance sheets since the Panic of '08 began. Oh, and just a little side note, for any children listening out there, the Fed minutes came out 5 years later, of course, when nobody really gives a damn. And the Fed minutes showed that as the economy was unraveling in 2007, 2008, the officials missed it entirely. It's in the minutes. The same people that didn't see it coming are now the people that are fixing it. And of course, they're also buying up $85 billion a month of government crap and pumping the money into the financial system. So as long as the people in the country see that, they get their measly paychecks and they could stay on whatever government programs are out there, they're really dead to the reality that the only reason this is picking up is because of the quantitative easing and the cheap interest rates. I'll give you an example. You want to buy a new car? I got a deal for you. That's right. Step right up. Pick anything out you want from the lot. Don't worry about interest. I'm going to give you 60 months free. How's that? You look like a nice guy. Pay me back when you get the money. They're creating another bubble.
Yeah, absolutely. And indeed, what you were saying there just rings so true over here in the United Kingdom as well. I mean, it is exactly the same. QE, zero interest rates. People can continue to draw down on the credit cards. I mean, they're still paying 19% on the credit card, but that's very nice for the banks. But basically, nobody really knows. And your point about the same people in charge today as was in charge in 2007-8 and missed it entirely, that is also very, very true here. I mean, they completely missed it. So, this is a bit worrying because what you're describing, it seems to me, is actually a global problem, not a US problem. Do you think that this is partly because they go to their lovely G20 meetings and they all agree on a common policy and nobody wants to let the side down, so they're all making exactly the same mistake? Or am I being a bit pessimistic about that?
Well, if there's an Illuminati, the un-Illuminati are running it, as it clearly shows. No, it's just a takeover. It's a takeover.
Yeah.
And people better grow up about this. It's a takeover. Here, the United States. You have the too big to fails. They used to control about 55% of the action before the panic of '08. Now they control 80%. I'm going to read something to you to show you how badly the game is rigged. We have Attorney General over here, Eric Holder.
I was going to ask you about him because he made a very interesting statement, didn't he? I mean, do carry on.
Yes. As a matter of fact, it should be Eric Himmler Holder, because he's also in favor of droning anybody to death, American citizen, on our soil as well. Or not quite that out front about it, but the implication is clearly there. At the same hearing, when he was talking about drones away, here's what he said about no one, not one person, not one head rolled in the financial crisis in the United States, just like over there in the UK and the rest of the world with the LIBOR scandal. But here's what he had to say. He said, I am concerned that the size of some of these institutions, meaning the banks, becomes so large that it does become difficult for us to prosecute them when we are hit with indications that if we do prosecute, if we do bring criminal charges, it will have a negative impact on the national economy, perhaps even the world economy. I think that this is a function of the fact that some of these institutions have become too large.
It's a staggering statement, isn't it? It's absolutely amazing. So what he is saying is that the Fed is frightened of its charges.
No. What he's saying is he's a flunky for the bankers. And they won't prosecute them. But you don't jaywalk, don't have one drink too many, or don't be 15 minutes late on paying your taxes. Because they're going to nail you. It's a takeover. It's a global takeover. Let's make this really simple. What they call austerity measures. What a polite word. I got an austerity measure for you. Here's what the deal is. I'm a banker. I'm a wanker. I'm going to make a lot of bad bets. I'm going to stretch myself all over the place to get as much money as I can, and I don't care who I loan it to. And then, when you can't pay it back, here's what we're going to do. Screw the taxpayers. Get every damn nickel you can from them. We'll call it privatization. Isn't that a polite word? We're going to take the most valuable assets of your public lands, your public properties, and your public resources, and we're going to sell them to our friends because we don't like taking losses.
Yeah, there's an acceleration, isn't there, of the sequestration of citizens' property. And governments are protecting themselves first and foremost, and they care about their citizens secondly, or not at all in some cases, I suppose. So, but can I just move on a little bit? Because one of the things I remember when we spoke back in New York, which must be, about 18 months ago, you warned me that the Arab Spring was the start of something which is going to be very, very serious. Now, since then, we've had Libya, we've had Egypt. I think Tunis was just about happening when we met in New York, and everything in the Middle East and the Maghreb has gone very, very sour. And I think I just don't know what the exit on this is. I mean, is there a willful destruction behind this by the big powers? I mean, you know, they've ended up in Egypt with another Mubarak, as you point out in your Trends Journal. What's your view on this, Gerald?
Well, what we said, and of course we had forecasted in the Trends Journal before it happened, is this wasn't an Arab Spring. That was polite language for revolution.
Yeah.
It's very simple. And the same thing is going on in Europe. Far too few have much too much, and way too many have much too little. You have over there what do you have, 90 million people living in Egypt. They're lucky to be making between $4 and $10 a day, while the crooks at the top of the pyramid are scamming all the dough. Same thing in Tunisia, same thing around the world. So what you're looking at, again, when you have the indignados taking to the streets in Spain, when you see riots virtually every day now in Greece, how many hundreds of thousands took to the streets in Portugal? It's class warfare. And what the United States and the other imperial powers, like the UK, Germany, and France, they can't get over their colonial trips. Isn't it wonderful? All of a sudden, France is back in Mali. Hey, Alistair, couldn't be because they pulled out 50 tons of gold there last year. Oh no, the French can't get over that French Sudan trip that they've been on since the 1890s. And what about Libya? Wasn't that a wonderful humanitarian mission?
Yes.
Couldn't be because of the oil, could it? Or it was the sand, the quality of the sand that they have over there. No, it's imperialism, and you have a bunch of psychopaths in charge.
Yep.
And that's what nobody wants to call a spade a spade. These are a bunch of sick people, and General Dwight D. Eisenhower warned the American people of this before he left office. 5-star general, supreme commander of the Allied forces, not one of these little chicken hawks like Cameron or Sarkozy or Hollande or Bush or Obama that never fought a day in their lives. This is the guy that ran the supreme commander of the Allied forces during World War II, warns the American people that the military-industrial complex is taking over the nation. Here we are. Love Afghanistan. Wonderful job, wasn't it? Hey, how about that Iraq war? Only cost $1 trillion, killed 1 million people, poisoned the place. Oh, and that lovely humanitarian mission in Libya. Wasn't it beautiful?
Yeah. It is amazing. I couldn't agree more. And Syria. I mean, what the hell's going on in Syria? They don't seem to have quite got the courage to go in there. I mean, thank goodness they haven't. Presumably that's because the Russians are watching Syria very, very closely, and it's just getting a bit too close to them for global comfort. I mean, do you have a view on Syria?
Yes, it's more of the United States and NATO trying to destabilize the nation and keep it into its grips. When you look at Syria, who's there? Who is Syria's ally? Couldn't be Iran, could it?
No, not possibly.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, of course, we also forgot to mention Yemen and Bahrain. Don't say anything bad about Bahrain, though. They could slaughter and torture all the people they want because, hey, after all, the United States has its 5th Fleet Station there. And it's the same puppet government the Brits put up there, you know, during the Great Game days. So going back to Syria, it's Syria, the only port in the Mediterranean that China and Russia could go into. They're the biggest ally of Iran. They also are a supporter of Hezbollah in Lebanon. And let us not forget that the Israelis lost against Hezbollah in Lebanon back in the day of, I believe it was 2008, if my history serves me properly.
Yes.
So they want him out of there. And I love this crap about these brutal dictators. Hey, don't call the emir over there of Bahrain a dictator, or the United Arab Emirates. Hey, and don't call the king a dictator. I'm sure you read your fairy tales. Kings are nice. They're good. Dictators and autocrats are bad. I mean, this is kids' crap. Who's behind putting all the money into Syria? The Arab Little League, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, these brutal dictatorships where there are no freedoms.
Oh, indeed. Absolutely. Yeah, and then, I mean, there's so many conflicts. You've now got Japan and China over the Senkaku Islands. I mean, that's just about oil, I think, isn't it? Or is it any more serious than that?
I don't know, but you're 100% right about it. And look, I've said this before. I keep saying it, and I'll say it again. History is repeating itself. Crash of 1929. A Great Depression, currency wars, trade wars, world war. The Panic of '08, the Great Depression, there's a depression on. You pointed out about the phony numbers coming out of the United States and the accurate ones from John Williams Shadow Stats. There's a depression in Greece. They don't call it that. Oh, it's only 27% official, over 50% unemployment among youth in Greece and Spain, and averaging throughout the Eurozone about 28%. And then, of course, the same high numbers of unemployment in Portugal, Italy, Slovenia, Romania, Bulgaria. It's a depression.
Yeah,
Ireland.
I quite
then
agree.
You have the currency wars. The currency wars are going on. You heard Abe, the new prime minister of Japan. What did he say? There's a currency war. What did he do? He devalued the yen, lost 20% since he came into power in December. Oh, and by the way, gold prices are going down. Not if you live in the UK and Japan. No. Not as you watch your sterling and your yen go into the toilet, or as we used to say in the Bronx, turlet.
Yeah.
And so now you have gold prices going up against the weak currencies, which, by the way, is the major message to watch before I continue going on, history repeating itself, is that this is the debasement of currencies. You can't keep printing cheap crap and not debase the currencies, whether it's the euro, the dollar, the yen, the yuan, or the pound sterling. So now you have currency, you have the Panic of '08, the Great Depression, currency wars. Abe says there's a currency war. Montega of Brazil says there's a currency war. Mervyn King of the Bank of England, a currency war. Axel Verba, the former head of the chairman of the president of Bundesbank and now head of UBS, there's a currency war. As you well know, there was the G20 meeting. The major issue was the currency war. And now you're asking about Japan and China. It's world war. You talked about what was going on in Syria, what's going on in Yemen, what's going on in Libya, what's going on in Bahrain, and all of the social unrest throughout Europe. It's war. They're leading us to war. When all else fails, the money junkies, the psychopaths, take you to war.
Yeah. Now, I think it's you're absolutely right, demonstrably on that. But these are all external wars. We now have a situation, I think, as you pointed out earlier, that governments are beginning to turn in on their own people just so that they can survive. Now, as that increases, that's going to develop civil unrest, internal unrest a lot more. Do you think there is going to be a switch in 2013 from that external emphasis towards, if you like, an internal or domestic emphasis in these major hotspots?
In some countries, yes. In other countries, no. In the United States and the UK, I would say no. And I'll tell you why. Processed food, processed bodies, processed minds, processed news, and you have a processed population. They're dead. The United States, they're taking more prescription drugs and painkillers than anywhere else in the world. The UK isn't far behind. Look what the people look like. Look what they watch. Look who they listen to. So in those countries, no. But in more advanced societies where people still have courage, where they still don't eat a lot of crap, and they care about what they put into their bodies, what they think, and what they watch, I believe there's going to be revolutions. And when you're looking at Italy, I think you're seeing the beginning of it. And when you look to Germany, I think you're going to see another part of it. And when I think you start looking to Greece and to Spain, you're also going to see more of it.
No, I think that's interesting, and I cannot disagree with it. I can't fault your logic. Turning to Italy, I mean, you are of Italian origin, New Yorker. Do you still have close ties with Italy? Do you go there? Do you follow the political scene at all?
Oh, very closely. As a matter of fact, I dated an Italian woman for many years, so I used to go back and forth. And I love Italy, and and of course, my passion is with Italy. So I've been following it for years. As a matter of fact, I was following Beppe Grillo since about 2002 when he came out walking on his hands to do the State of the Nation address following Berlusconi, and did so because he said the world was upside down, and the only thing that could save it was if God himself came down to earth. But then he warned, this time, don't send a boy to do a man's job. So I never considered him a comedian, as the media does. I considered him as a brilliant satirist.
Yeah.
And as I look what's going on in Italy, Alistair, I believe that it is the model for the future. It's not a protest, it's a movement. And that's very different. People go out to the streets and protest, and then they go back after it's all over, or else the government falls. And what replaces it is more of the same, but worse, as we've seen in so many instances, whether it's Tunisia or Egypt, and you just keep going around the world. But this is a real movement. And the keys behind the movement that I'm most intrigued with is this call for direct democracy. I mean, after all, it works pretty well in Switzerland. What is it, about 7 million people?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, food's pretty good, highest standard of living in the world. And everybody has guns, by the way, and they don't blow each other's brains out. They vote on issues. The people vote, not the politicians that are in the pockets of the most powerful and the ones that fill their pockets with the most money. So I think the Beppe Grillo movement, where he wants to also have a referendum on whether or not to stay in the euro, as well as what's going on in Germany with a referendum as well, is starting to be talked about whether or not to stay in the euro, is really the future. The people have to take the government into their own hands, because these are not governments of the people, by the people, for the people. As I mentioned, it's a takeover. It's a takeover in every field. You know, when I was a young boy growing up in the Bronx and Yonkers, there was a quaint little thing they used to have. They had hardware stores. Now all we have is we have Home Depot. We have Lowe's. You don't have them anymore. Back in the old days, we had another quaint little thing. We had pharmacists. Now we have CVS and Walgreens and Rite Aid. We had something else. We had mom and pop shops. Now we have Walmarts and Targets. It's a takeover in every field. And then when you look at Italy, look at all of the small businesses, of course, now that are going out of business. Why do people love going to Italy so much for? Oh, it couldn't be because of the fine food and the lifestyle. And you only get that lifestyle by not working for the corporate man and making $62.50 a week stocking shelves and getting a hernia and then being thrown into the ditch after you're no good anymore. So I believe that what's going on in Italy is a model to follow.
That's interesting. And it's very hard to see how the Eurozone can stay together with such a big fundamental democratic change being imposed on the government. And I was interested in what you're saying about Switzerland, because I've long shared your view about Switzerland, that its strength is that the politicians have their power limited. And I was actually told by a politician, the worst place to be a politician is Switzerland, which to me recommends it. So,
of course it does, yeah.
Now, I think what I see, and I'd be interested in your comments, what I see is the collapse of the purchasing power of paper money. Now, one of the really important things about such an event is the effect on food prices and the effect on energy prices. And that, I would have thought, is very, very destabilizing. Can you say a few words on that subject for us, Gerald?
Yes. I don't see it. In some areas, I see inflation, as you're mentioning, with food and energy. And right now, of course, we're seeing a little bit of a dip in gold prices, but it is supply and demand. And when you look, for example, at what's happening in China, You're seeing the numbers coming out for the beginning of the year, softer than expected. And you're seeing slowdowns basically in most parts. But the only reason, again, is that any of this is being held up is by the economy, that is, held up is because we're being held up. And that is that they're printing all of this money. Now, I believe there's going to be inflation, but more significant to me, and again, this is only the way I see it. Our motto at the Trends Journal is think for yourself. I believe that prices are going to go up because the value of the currency is going to go down, as evidenced, as you're seeing, as these currency wars keep heating up. As I mentioned, the yen has lost 20% of its value since December.
Yeah, and sterling has lost 9% since the 1st of January.
Exactly. So now that's why it's costing more. It's not because the prices are going up. It's the value of the currencies going down. So whether it's Japan, the UK, or Zimbabwe, it costs more when you have debased currencies to buy that pound of coffee. And so, yes, there will be inflation, but inflation in terms not because of demand, because I do see demand declining in a number of fields. For example, in Australia, in Canada, you're looking at Canada's exports. They're down. And the natural resource exporting countries, they're exporting less because demand is slowing down in China and other major countries that are the manufacturers. So I believe that it's going to be inflation by whatever name you call it, but it's going to happen because of debasement of the currency and continuation of printing all of this cheap money not worth the paper it's not printed on.
I think that's a very important point. So just to say what you're saying another way around, essentially what's happening is that money is going down rather than goods are going up. But the way in which traditionally governments have managed to stop that process from getting out of control is to raise interest rates. But if we raise interest rates now, governments are in trouble, banks are in trouble. That option I would have thought is not on the table, is it?
No, and that's the whole thing. At some point, they're going to have to raise interest rates. Alistair, I just bought 3 buildings. I'm in Colonial Kingston, 2 hours north of New York City. It was the first capital of New York. For Europe, this isn't old, but here it is. I just bought 3 buildings that predate the Revolutionary War. Here's the interest rates I got. 2 of them were commercial, 3.2%. 3.2%.
Amazing.
That's commercial loan. Another one locked in for 15 years at 2.875. That's
going to be a no-brainer because John Williams reckons that inflation is running at 9%.
Exactly. And the debasement of the currency, I'm going to be paying back with cheaper money.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm doing it. I'm not doing it because I'm a real estate speculator. It's because I love where I live. I love where our business is. And these are beautiful buildings that I want to restore and put them in better shape. So when I pass on, they're there for future generations. So, what I'm mentioning to you this about is because of what's keeping the game going. As I mentioned, you want to buy a car? I'll give you 0 interest rates. You want to buy a building or a residence? I'll give you hardly any interest rates. So at some point, this is going to have to go up. And when it goes up, the bond market crashes. We're going to see an implosion worse than anything we've seen before. But don't worry about it. You will not, I guarantee you, mark my words, you will not be talking about it.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the reason why. Because we're going to be in war.
Yeah, that's the trouble. That's the trouble. It's the social trends underneath which hide or justify everything that happens on top. It's very much Hayek's road to serfdom, isn't it? I mean, that was the game plan.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it. You can follow history. The crash of 29, Great Depression, currency wars, trade wars, world war. The panic of 08, The Great Depression, currency wars, trade wars, world war. It's history repeating itself. The names have changed. The players are the same. The money junkies. The money changes. It's all it's about. And the psychopaths. And there's one in a country near you. You could call him prime minister, chancellor, or president.
Absolutely. Well, Gerald, it has been a delight, as always, to speak to you. A delight because I like speaking to you, not because I like hearing your message, which unfortunately I find I cannot demolish. But we must do it again in the not too distant future. And I would like very much to thank you, Gerald, for coming on. And I hope that our listeners do have a look at the Trends Journal and the website, which is trendsjournal.com. Thank you again, Gerald.
Well, thank you. Always good being on with you.
Subscribe to the Gold Money newsletter at www.goldmoney.com to receive email updates on new articles, videos, and iTunes podcasts from our Gold Research section.